guys, it's Adrian. Welcome to my channel. Today, I'm here to bring you my March wrap-up. I have had an insane reading month. I don't know who I am and what has happened to me, but I have read 12 books this month, plus I started 2 other ones and one of them I DNF'd. So technically I read like 12 and a quarter books this month. Out of the 14 books that are on this wrap-up, one of them I just started, so it doesn't really count. One of them I DNF'd, one got a 2-star rating, 7 of them got a 4-star rating, and 4 of them got a 5-star rating. I think I only had 4 5-star rated books in the entirety of last year. So this month is like crazy town. Because I have so many books to talk about this month and I realize this is going to be a tad bit on the long side, I'm going to do 2 things. First of all, I'm going to try to keep my reviews of these books pretty short and concise. If you want to know more about my opinions, you can always ask me in the comments below and I'd love to discuss them with you. But I'm also going to leave each book and the timestamp for that book in the description box below, because not everybody has time to watch a big long video. So I will leave that down for you so you can go find which book you want to hear more of my thoughts and opinions about, and you can just skip ahead because I'm nice like that. You're welcome. Before I get started off, I want to say that I participated in March Mystery Madness and Middle Grade March. So I have a bunch of different books. I only ended up reading 1 mystery book, and I think I read 3 or 4 middle grade books. I'm not really sure off the top of my head. One of them I DNF'd, and so that's what I'm going to talk to you about now. This one I read The Horse and His Boy by C.S. Lewis. This is the 3rd book if you're reading them chronologically in the Chronicles of Narnia. I did this one with my kids and they kind of lost interest, and to be quite honest, so did I. I have read this one before, but I remember it wasn't my favorite. It just took a really long time to actually get into the story, and by the time you got into it, it still was kind of slow paced and it just didn't live up to The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe and Prince Caspian and all the other ones that I've read. So I might pick this one up and finish it up by myself in the month of April. I might not. It kind of depends on what I'm in for, but it wasn't a big hit with my kids, unfortunately. I hope I can remember everything for these books because I've read so many that I kind of forget what some of them are about. But anyway, the first book that I completed in the month of March also happened to be my first 5-star rating for the month of March, and that was Winter by Marissa Meyer. I had started this one in February and I finished the last 300 pages or so in March. This is the conclusion to the Lunar Chronicles. There are 4 main books in the Lunar Chronicle series. There is also a novella and a book of short stories, but there are 4 books in the main series which I have now completed, and those 4 books are fairy tale retellings for Cinderella, Little Red Riding Hood, Rapunzel, and this last one is Snow White. And as these books continue on, all of their stories kind of get mixed and intertwined. This was an epic ending. This book is like 850 pages long and it was worth every single page, and when I finished it, I kicked myself for not picking it up earlier. The reason that I didn't want to read it is because it's so long, but it was really, really good. All these fairy tales are sci-fi retellings. For example, the first book, Cinderella, is about a girl named Cinder who is a cyborg. It is so good. I will tell you this, if you are not a fan of sci-fi books, you should still pick these up. They are a great way to kind of get you into sci-fi because they're so relatable and they're so easy to read, and they're not like ridiculously over-the-top scientific stuff that the average Joes among us can't understand. I recommend this series. If you haven't read it, you should. They're quick reads, they're fun, they're easy. Go do it. The next book I read for March Mystery Madness. I'm not entirely sure if this is actually a mystery book, but I found it a little bit mysterious, so I'm going to count it anyway. And that was Allegedly by Tiffany D. Jackson. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. This one follows a girl named Mary, and when Mary was 9 years old, she was convicted of murdering a baby and sent to jail. Now she's 16 years old, she's been released, and she's living in a group home, and she's kind of dealing with all the consequences of that. And in the meantime, we're trying to figure out what exactly happened the night that baby died. Did Mary actually kill this baby, or didn't she? I really enjoyed this one. I listened to this one on audiobook and I listened to it in a day. It was really good. I will say that the ending of this book kind of blew me away, and I'm still not really sure how I feel about it. I liked it, but it was one of those books that kind of gave you a ugh feeling at the end and you just don't really know how to handle it. But I definitely recommend this book if you like that kind of thing. It was good. Like I said, I gave it a 4 stars. The next book I read was also an audiobook. The great thing about audiobooks was when you listen to them on double speed, you can get a whole bunch of them done in a month. Anyway, the one that I read next was Let's Pretend That Never Happened by Jenny Lawson. This one was really funny. I previously read last year around this time Furiously Happy by Jenny Lawson. Furiously Happy was a memoir specifically for mental health, and I really enjoyed that one. This one was funny, which was what I expected because Jenny Lawson is just hysterical, but I also found myself relating to this one a little bit more. There were parts of this one that made me go, huh, and made me think about my own life and do some self-reflecting, which is what I think the purpose of this book was. I ended up giving this one a 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. If you don't like nonfiction, I would suggest starting off with a memoir like this because they're really funny and they're relatable. I also would really recommend this one on audiobook because it's read by Jenny herself, which puts it way over the top, and it was just fantastic. And then I finished Alex and Eliza by Marissa de la Cruz. This one I only gave it 2 stars. Now, I will say, I am not a huge fan of romance books. I got this one because I wanted to read it around Valentine's Day, and February got crazy, so I didn't end up reading it in February, so I figured I'd read it in March. And it's a tiny book. It's got huge font, so I picked it up thinking, oh, I can get this book done in a day or 2. This book took me 10 days. It was so slow. But like I said, I'm not a fan of romance, so I'm kind of not being fair on it because I just don't like books like that. But when I do read books, historical fiction books, I kind of hope that I'll get a little bit more of a history around it, and I just didn't. I got nothing. I just got boring romance. But just because I don't like it and I'm not a big fan of romance doesn't mean that you shouldn't read it. If you like these kinds of books, then by all means, pick it up. It just wasn't a book for me. I wasn't a huge fan. 2 stars. Next up is my first graphic novel read ever. Are you proud? I'm proud. I have never read a graphic novel before, mostly because I wasn't sure if I would be able to because I am visually impaired. These books tend to be kind of small and they're all filled with lots of pictures, but it actually worked out really well. I will say the font of this book was a little bit difficult for me to get into, but you don't care about that. Anyway, the book that I read was Wires and Nerve by Marissa Meyer. I got this book last year for Mother's Day, and I didn't get to read it because I hadn't finished winter yet. And as soon as I finished winter, I picked this one up and it was so good. The only thing though, because I've never read a graphic novel, I have no real comparison, so maybe you guys can help me out in the comments, is that I found this story to be kind of simple, almost like a child's story. Like, it wasn't really very complex. Is that normal for graphic novels? I mean, obviously you don't have a whole lot of time to tell a story with all the pictures and stuff. I did enjoy the story very much. I gave it a 4 stars, but I'm just curious, are all graphic novels like this, or is it just this one in particular? Just so I know what to expect if I decide to pick up some more graphic novels in the future. I'm not opposed to this more simplistic storytelling, but I didn't find this one to live up, say, to the rest of the Little Chronicles, but I did enjoy it. Next up was another audiobook. I've been really into the memoirs that are written and read by the author on audiobook, and so this one I read, which is by Lauren Graham, and that's Talking as Fast as I Can from Gilmore Girls to Gilmore Girls. I love Lauren Graham. I love Gilmore Girls. I watched it all through high school. It was really great. That gives you an idea of how old I am. I went into this one thinking it will give me some insight to the Gilmore Girls show, which it did, but it also really made me think a lot. In fact, one of my quotes from my mid-month check-in came from this book, just about how we tend to always live in our phones and in our social media, and we don't interact with people very often anymore. And like I said in my mid-month check-in, I've been dealing with this a lot for myself recently, about spending more time with my kids and making sure that I'm not always with my nose in a book or my nose in my phone, just making sure that I interact with my kids more than what I do. And so this really struck home with me. Another chapter that really struck home with me is she wrote a whole chapter about writing and her methods of writing, and I actually implemented it in my own writing, and it's been working out relatively well for me. So I enjoyed this book for what it was, a Gilmore Girls insight, but I also found it very inspiring for certain chapters. Again, another memoir that you should check out if you're interested in Gilmore Girls, if you've watched Gilmore Girls, or you like Lauren Graham in general. Again, also check out the audiobook because it's read by Lauren herself. Next up was the first of 2 buddy reads that I did this month, and that was Snow Like Ashes by Sarah Raasch. I did this one with Julia from Julia Gully. This was a good book. I gave this one 4 stars. It was definitely a YA book, but I found it to be very intriguing. I found the politics of this book to be very intriguing. This one follows a girl named Myra, and Myra comes from the Kingdom of Winter, and in this realm there are 4 season kingdoms and there are 4 rhythm kingdoms. The Spring Kingdom has conquered the Winter Kingdom 16 years ago, and there are now, 16 years later, 8 remaining refugees, and Myra is one of these refugees. And this book follows their journey to find Winter's conduit, which produces their magic, and to reunite their Winter Kingdom and to get it back, more or less. Like I said, this one was filled with some serious YA tropes, but I couldn't put the book down. I love the politics, I love reading about the seasons, I love the way that the book was set up, and I really loved how the first book ended relatively well. I mean, it was a little bit of a cliffhanger, but it wasn't like a real cliffhanger, so if I wasn't going to read the next book right away, it would be okay. I really enjoyed it. I have since picked up Ice Like Fire. This one ended up getting a 4 stars from me. I enjoyed it. It was a quick YA political fantasy read. Another audiobook that I listened to was They Both Die at the End by Adam Silvera. This was my first Adam Silvera book, and I really enjoyed this one. This one follows Matea and Rufus, and they both live separate lives until they get a call from Deathcast that tells them that they are going to die on that day. Because in this world, when you're gonna die, you get a phone call that says, hey dude, you're gonna die today. That's an awful way to go. I don't want to know when I'm gonna die. Rufus and Mateo meet each other through the Last Friend app, which is an app dedicated to those who have been called by Deathcast, and they form this friendship and they go through their last day together. I really enjoyed this book. I will say I was a little disappointed at the ending. I expected something bigger and better, and it just kind of was normal. I mean, I guess normal's not bad. I still really enjoyed this one. I gave it a 4.5 stars. I just am a big fan of drama, and I didn't get quite as much drama in the end as I had been expecting because of all this build-up. Next up for middle grade March, I read the first Land of Stories book, The Wishing Spell by Cruz Colfer. I read this with my children and my husband, and this is the first middle grade book that I have read as an adult that I cannot wait to read the next one. For those of you who've been around in my channel for any length of time, you know that I haven't had the greatest luck with middle grade books. I read them as a mom for my kids, and while I want them to be appropriate for my kids, I also, obviously, if I'm reading a book, want it to be enjoyable for me as well. And it's either one or the other. Either I like it, but it's not good enough for my kids, or I don't like it, but my kids might like it. This one we listened mostly to on audiobook with my whole family, and my kids wanted to listen to it in the morning before school, before their dad left for work, so they were up at 6 o'clock in the morning. Mom, can we please finish the story? And my husband wouldn't let us listen to it without him because he really liked the story. If you are looking for a middle grade book for your children that you will also enjoy yourself, a nice book to read together as a family, this is the way to go. This one follows twins Alex and Connor, and they are about 11 years old, I believe. Alex is a huge fan of fairy tales. Connor, not so much. Their dad and their grandma have read them fairy tales since they were little kids, and they're always telling them stories about fairy tales. Until one day, Alex and Connor's dad passes away. It's been a year since their dad has passed away, and they're having a difficult time. They've had to move out of their house. Their mom is constantly working. They don't have many friends at school, and now it's their 12th birthday, and they're just kind of down on their luck, not having a good day, until their grandma gives them a storybook. The storybook happens to be a magic portal, and they land in the Land of Stories, which is a whole bunch of fairy tales, and it's not just the fairy tales that we know, but all kinds of fables and fairy tales, and they all are kind of mixing together, and it's kind of taking place after all these fairy tales, and they have some crazy adventures. My whole family loved this book. I got this one and the second one from my daughter for her 9th birthday, which was last week, and she's gotten a whole bunch more of them for her birthday from other people, and she's already reading the second one, and I'm a little bit jealous because I want to read it too, but she says I have to wait till she's done. But I'm going to stop now because I've been raving about the story for far too long already. You really should go read this. Next up was a buddy of the read that I did with Megan from Rogers Reads, and that was Small Great Things by Jodi Picoult. This one follows a black labor and delivery nurse named Ruth, and Ruth has been a labor and delivery nurse for 20 years. She does her job well, she's loved by her patients, she always goes above and beyond until she meets a couple named Brittany and Turk. And Brittany and Turk are white supremacists, and they do not want Ruth anywhere near their baby. Unfortunately, Ruth is left with her baby for one reason or another, and during this time the baby goes into respiratory arrest and the baby dies. And Ruth is convicted of first-degree murder and negligence. The story follows Ruth's entire journey about how she's dealing with this and the whole trial process, and deals with a lot of black and white discrimination. I have a lot of stuff to say about this book, but I will tell you, this book made me sick to my stomach. It made me so angry. I was furious. I have a lot to say about this one, and I think I'm going to do a spoiler-free review on this as well. I ended up giving this one a 5 stars because if you don't read the author's notes at the end of books, you really should. I read this book thinking this was not my favorite Jodi Picoult book. I didn't like the way that the plot developed. I found it to be a little bit slow, kind of very predictable, typical Jodi Picoult books, but I feel like she had done a better job. until I got about 2/3 of the way book. Just the things that she was saying really made me think. And then I read the author's notes of this book, and the author's notes said that she wrote this book as a middle-class white woman for the white woman. She said a whole bunch of things that I don't really want to talk about in this wrap-up video because it's going to take too long, but it really made me think about how I live my life. And even though I am accepting of everyone and I don't consider myself prejudiced at all, we still all do prejudiced things, whether we realize it or we don't. And I thought it was very eye-opening. I can see why she said she's going to get a lot of backlash for this book, because not everybody likes to be pointed out like that. I do want to do a review on this one. I do want to talk about it. I'm a little afraid because of the backlash that I'm afraid that I'm going to get for it. But because of the way that she made me think in the last third of her story, and then reading the author's notes and seeing that she did exactly what she wanted to do, I ended up giving this book a 5 stars. Again, I'm probably going to do a review on this one and talk about why I feel this way and what have you. But for right now, I'm going to leave it at that. You should read this book. It was good. Read the author's notes when you're done. 3 more books, guys. We're almost there. The next one that I finished was Harry Potter and the Half-Blood Prince. This is the 6th book to the Harry Potter series written by J.K. Rowling. This one, I only gave a 4.5 stars to. I have given all the other ones a 5 stars. I will say that that might not be fair because I accidentally heard parts of the Harry Potter movie that goes along with this book. I was supposed to be sleeping, but I woke up and I was listening, and it's my own fault. But I didn't find this one quite as thrilling as all the other ones. I did enjoy it very much. I'm not a Harry Potter hater. I still gave it a 4.5 stars, but I like the other ones a little bit better. And I will say my favorite Harry Potter book still remains to be the first one. There's something so magical and innocent. Not exactly innocent because it's still about Lord Voldemort and Deathly Wizards, but I don't know. I like the first one. It has a special place in my heart. Anyway, 4.5 stars. I've since started the next one, which we'll hear about in a moment. The last book I actually completed in March was on my April TBR. Shame, 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 but I couldn't wait anymore. I read it in March, and I read it in less than 36 hours, and there's almost 700 pages in this book, and that is Gemina. I liked this book. There are a lot of people that liked this book less than the first one, but I think I might have liked it more. The only thing that I liked less about this book than I did about the first one is that there seemed to be more surveillance footage in this one, which read more like a story, and there was a lot of it. Now, I think you need it in order to be able to move the story along because of the way that things happened. But because of that, it seemed to be less different images than the first one. I will say that this one had drawings from a journal that I did appreciate, that I liked very much. But this one takes place mostly on the jump station Heimdall, which we have heard about in the first book. It follows a group of characters. One of them is called Nick, and Nick is sort of like a Russian mafia kind of guy. And it also follows Hannah, who is the daughter of the captain of this station. I will say, this book kind of gave me a little bit of nightmares. It verges on horror, sort of verges on horror. I might be a little bit of a sissy, but come on guys, if you have read this book, you know exactly what I'm talking about. And it also turned into one of my favorite types of books that I have read ever. If you have watched my channel, you know what I'm talking about. I will not say because of spoilers, but I loved this book. I have since purchased Obsidio. And the last book is a book that I only read 50 pages of, so it doesn't quite count as a wrap-up, but I'm going to mention it just to mention that I read it, and that was Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows. Like I said, I only got 50 pages in. I have since gotten further in, but I am going to finish out the series this month because I am tired of saying that I have not yet read the Harry Potter series in its entirety. Now, when I finish this one, I can. Go me. Whew, that was a lot. I still have 4 videos to do and I am still tired. I can't believe I read that many books. I am now currently almost at half of my reading goal for the entire year because I have read so many books this month. If you enjoyed this video, give it a big thumbs up. If you haven't yet, I'd love for you to subscribe. In the comments below, let me know what your favorite book was that you read in the month of March so I can start building my May TBR. Thanks for watching guys, and see you next time. Bye!